Well, thanks for your time and expertise today on intuition, Matt. And thanks for being here.
Thank you. I really appreciate your time today, Michael. When you reached out to me to continue doing these videos, I was really thrilled. And today we're going to be talking about intuition. So let's get started. Let's just hop right into it, right? So we're talking about what is intuition. A lot of people, when they get into this sort of thing, they got no clue what we're talking about, right?
Correct. Well, that's we start with logic, instinct, and intuition.
Okay.
Logic and instinct depend on prior knowledge. Logic is like the sun comes up every morning. I can logically predict that the sun will rise tomorrow. And instinct is, well, I've hunted this type of animal before, so instinctively I expect the animal to respond and react this way on a hunt. These are like recognition primed decisions based on previous experience. What's your experience with intuition?
Well, intuition has been really great, actually, for me. It saved my life once. I was walking home from work in Sacramento, and I was just coming across the American River and taking the footpath from the bridge down to the street to my house, the neighborhood. And this guy comes around the corner, and he's wearing an outfit like he's dressed up from the Clockwork Orange movie. And I take a few steps past him, and just spidey sense goes off, right? And I'm immediately in a kamae from Aikido. Like, that's the first art I learned as a kid. And I did a 180, and I'm ready for him. And he had an extendo baton just raised up, about to beam me over the head with it. And I guess he decided that that was a little bit more of a challenge than he was ready for that night. And he decided to go his own way after he saw me just instantly make that 180. So yeah, it saved my life, I feel like.
Right. So intuition is like the ability to acquire knowledge, in your case, really quickly, without any prior experience or cognitive reasoning. You just know things without any prior knowledge about them. So
yeah, I guess and it can seem almost foreign, right? Like, there's no words, it's just boom, you have this knowledge. What are you going to do with it?
Exactly. So we could kind of call intuition the operating system that runs beneath our conscious awareness. And you just brought up an excellent value of intuition. Can you think of another one?
Yes. So, that is a survival, benefit right there. Another one is being able to sit down and allow that to guide you within your daily life. Do I want to have this for breakfast or this for lunch? Very basic decisions is one way that you can help develop your intuition. Just like check in with yourself. What is it that I really want in this, little thing day to day? And that will help, bring up those buried desires. The intuition can help flower inside. I feel like that's one of the real benefits of developing your intuition, is that you can get in touch with yourself and what's underneath, all of this stuff that we kind of build on top of ourselves through the years.
Well put. So it's kind of like an intuitive intelligence, as opposed to, I just kind of intuitively know this is a better breakfast. I'll be able to digest it easier for what's coming up in the day without knowing what's coming, and just head into the day a little more prepared, because you're listening to your intuition.
Right. It's that eating by feel sort of thing. It's a really basic thing that we can do to develop our intuition. And I feel like, that kind of guidance feeds right back into other practices, like in our esoteric life, when we go to do like Reiki self-healing practices. if you can check in with yourself and see what your belly wants to be fed with, you can do the same thing with your energy body, right?
Correct. Now, I remember from cranial sacral therapy and also Reiki, that for listening to the body and during a healing with CST, you kind of like just tune in to where the body wants your attention. And in doing tandem cranial sacral therapy, one time in Hawaii, I was doing a tandem with a woman practitioner, and she, through her intuition, zoned in that the woman needed attention in her uterus and ovary area. And I didn't pick that up at all. My intuition, her body's spoke to my intuition for some tension release in the neck. Now, I don't know if it's because the other practitioner was in the same club, the woman club, that she was able more in tune with that than I, but we both tuned into intuitively different areas and different challenges that the client's body had. What have you noticed in Reiki?
Well, I'm glad you brought that up, because there's two different ways that we kind of work with intuitive guidance within Reiki. So the first one would be Reiki Ho. So, like when you sit down and you go into Gasho and then you come back up and you allow the Reiki energy to guide you as to like where you're going to put your hands on your body, right? So that's the like level 1 method of being intuitively guided. So when we go on to, like treating other people, then we have Biosen scanning. So with the Biosen scanning, we're trying to feel where the disturbance is within their energetic field, how far up it is in that energetic body, how far away it is from the body, and then slowly come back into where it is and address it where it needs to be. That all takes a little bit of time in developing familiarity with how to do the treatments, how to do your structured self-hand healing process. So, the structures kind of provide us with a stairway to get up to that platform to be intuitively led.
Yeah, I have noticed the same thing in doing Reiki attunements and Reiki healings, that you just, as a person who's giving an attunement, I just kind of like get the ego mind out of the way and let whatever wants to come through, come through. And that form of intuition allows, I'll say, the divine to work through us to the benefit of the client or the recipient of the transmission.
I agree. I have found that as I teach Reiki, the attunements seem to be a unique process for each student. There's a general structure as to where the symbols can be placed on the body and the energy field and what they do, as well as, how you can help somebody's central channel become accustomed to that. But I agree, it becomes a unique experience for all of these attunements for all of my students now. I don't do all of them quite the same. If you look from the outside, maybe it is similar, but it's not exactly identical.
Yeah, correct. I've noticed that each individual has very different needs, and getting the ego mind out of the way allows the intuitive intelligence to come through and deliver what's needed in the moment.
One of the things that I found seems to be a challenge and that I really enjoy working with is the violet breath. For many Reiki practitioners, when they get to level 3, the violet breath can be a little bit difficult if they don't have experience with other meditative systems, things like that. And I find that the more that I work with the violet breath, just as a personal practice, the easier it is for me to be intuitively guided. What do you think there is from that violet energy that it really opens up our intuition?
Well, that in working with Sanjiao, I started off pulling in divine light in a certain color. And through years of working with Sanjiao, and I was kind of intuitively led to start changing the color. And the different colors, like the different Reiki symbols, have different purposes, powers, and energies that help different clients in different ways. So the violet, that's vibrating at the frequency of the crown chakra. It's a very high energy, and that that particular meditation I found very powerful when I was learning it from Sifu Matsuo, and I used that a lot when I was in the Shingon Temple, and it kind of helped expand the central channel, I found.
Mm. So basically, you could liken that to widening the funnel so that more information can come in.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
that's very well put. Yeah, that's how I would put it.
Wonderful. Well, thank you for that perspective on it, and I actually agree with that 100%. That we're widening the central channel, from like one line to this bigger, thing, and then eventually through our whole energy body. It's like, what central channel? I just am.
Walking central channel, ready to share.
Right. I ran into a Tibetan Lama at the Winco. Gosh, I think it was a year or two ago now, and our fields, like, we both looked up and looked around, like, who is that? Who's around? Like, what's going on? It was a trip, because we both looked up at the same time, and he was just the next register over checking out, and like, we did a small bow, and like, I just poured what I could through my mind into him, and he did the same back to me, just like, hey, I recognize that you're divine. And he did it just completely silently, and just like, my energy exploded, right? And my son's mom, she was standing right next to me. She's like, what's going on? Who is that guy? He's a Tibetan monk. It's okay. We're just blasting each other right now. No joke, Michael. We got back to the vehicles, and he and I had parked across from each other. So like, I'm sitting there in the passenger seat, like, trying to integrate this for a few moments, and I look up, and he's sitting in his driver's seat trying to integrate it for a few moments. It's I find that when you are open to experience, that it finds you out of the blue, right?
Yeah, that's one of the beautiful things about intuition. Now, before we get into talking about urban living versus rural, and how we can develop our intuition, I would like to mention and ask our listeners and watcher viewers to hang around till the end, because I'd like to announce a video that I made, My Intuition Guides Me, and also a Valentine's Day video. So
Okay.
keep around to the end, and we'll talk some more about those. Now, as we're getting into, many of our listeners, not all, but many, are living in urban areas, large places with lots of noise, autos and buses and trucks driving around. And how does that urban living versus a more rural, natural, how does that, in your opinion, affect intuition?
Well, I feel like if you are fortunate enough to live away from the city, you have a clear advantage in connecting with nature and getting practices like Taoist stillness, like Zolwang, sitting and forgetting, stuff like that. You have a very clear advantage because the environment is much more still. The natural sounds are not nearly as disturbing as a diesel truck zooming on by, right? I personally prefer bird song. So that is something that we see pretty regularly, right, in this community, is that a number of people will go on retreat once, twice a year at least. to a place that is not in a city. You know, maybe if you live here in Phoenix, you might go up to Sedona or Prescott. You know, some people will, you know, get out and go up to the nearest mountaintop. You know, there's all kinds of places that you can really get away from the hustle and bustle of people all around and all of the urban noise. You know, I feel like water is one of the biggest things that we can do to help us get our energy. Andrea Vitamus, a couple of years ago, I was part of his online classes that he was doing, and he had us experiment with visualizing that we were sitting next to a lake and there was a gentle breeze and everything was joyful and the sun was, you know, like gently coming down, like we weren't too warm and all of that. And, you know, it was one of the nicest meditative experiences I've ever had, sitting in my bedroom. So if you can find an environment like that, that's already naturally in that state, you don't have to imagine it, right? You can just enjoy the environment around you and really get down to business with some, you know, more difficult meditations that you may struggle with. You know, for instance, the 432 breaths of the Vajrasattva practice is a lot more difficult in an urban environment. Trying to do that sun and moon breath through 432 breaths of zero thought. I mean, Wu Shen, you know, that empty mind state is not easy to maintain when, you know, everybody's talking around you, when you can hear your neighbor screaming at his wife or the dog's barking or you know, whatever is going on in the city.
I feel also, I agree with you in that there's just a lot more distractions, and what's basically getting between us and our intuition, which we're all born with this intuitive connection, this intuitive intelligence, but the ego mind comes in, and then you've got the urban distractions, and I feel it's a lot easier to just connect with our intuitive intelligence when we're in a more natural, relaxed. The loudest sound is a bird twittering in the tree. That makes it a lot easier to maintain what we already have and not get distracted. I think distracted is what the urban environment can cause far more than the natural. You can get distracted by the ego mind in the most idyllic place, but if you've got less distractions in a natural environment, then you're one step ahead in the game of connecting and maintaining that intuitive connection.
I agree. And another thing that the more rural environment provides, you know, unless you're like in a like a large farmland area, but if you're in like more of a like natural landscape, unlike the city, which is, you know, cut into all of these concrete strips and all of this other stuff, you know, the land actually has a lot more energy available for you to take in.
Good point.
Should you wish to take in the external energy, you know, it's a lot more clean. You know, so if you're, you know, particularly, you know, I'm a Xingyi guy. So if you're doing like 5 elements practice, that cleaner environmental energy is really nice. You know, I really like to do a Xingyi Chan, and my sister, her husband, their family has a ranch in Capay Valley, California. And, you know, Xingyi Chuan out there is great, especially when you got like half a dozen bald eagles flying overhead, right?
That's a much better distraction.
Yeah, I'll take that any day. Half a dozen bald eagles trying to hunt the grandma's dog. Okay, this is a fun time, right? Hey, look, I'll do some Xingyi. I'm an eagle too. So, you know, I feel like if you can, you know, get out of the city for a little while and get some practice in, you're going to gain benefit very quickly. Anybody that takes, you know, even like a little day trip outside a few hours, you know, get to a place where you can, you know, get some peace and quiet, and, you know, maybe next to a stream, something like that, then do it.
Get your feet wet. Yeah.
Take your shoes off, right? Get connected to the energy of Mother Earth.
Yeah. Okay, now let's transition into how to develop or reconnect with your intuition.
Well, unfortunately, reconnecting with your discipline or reconnecting with your intuition requires discipline, right? Like you have to do this as a small process day in and day out. So earlier I mentioned, like just checking in with your gut, like what do you want to eat? That's one small way to do it. We also mentioned, Reiki and Reiki, doing the self-healing practice, like figuring out where you want your hands to be on your body. This is a one way you can get more in touch with your intuition. That said, you have to do it every day. If you don't do it every day, that intuitive sense doesn't grow, right? So you have to have discipline. You have to keep at it. And then, by the time you know it, you check back in with yourself a year later. If you've been doing, self-healing, like you kind of develop your own process, right? Like there's sure the traditional 12 spots that you can put your hands on, but everybody's energy is different. And let's say you have a flu one week and then the next week you feel great. You're probably going to be working different hand positions on your body when you have the flu than when you feel great. So, depending on where your energy is, you need to be able to address what's going on with you at that time. And if you haven't developed that familiarity with your energy body through a disciplined practice, the more free form practice is going to be less effective.
Good point. In teaching Mikkyo here in Berlin, Germany, back in 2015, a lot of the students, their question to me was, how can I trust my intuition? And for an answer to that, I started teaching in the Mikkyo classes using tarot cards, and that can be for example, the Osho Tarot deck, any tarot cards at all, even regular playing cards. You draw 4 cards, you just pull them, you find them that are very different. So if we're using a regular deck, the Ace of Spades, Hearts, Diamonds, and Clubs, those are 4 different energies. Then you just scan it with your hands, and the one that is calling your attention, just pick it up and really scan into the details of the card. It called you, so scan into it, get connected with it, turn them upside down, shuffle them around, and scan with your hand. And here you're using your intuitive intelligence to find the card that called you. And this is one way that people can learn to trust their intuitive intelligence. Because that's a big step for a lot of people. They're like, well, I'm on my way to work. I always drive this way, but I'm feeling drawn to drive this way today. And they're like, should I trust it? Or I never took this way before. And up ahead, beyond their ability to know consciously, there's an accident, traffic jam, 20-minute delay. But how do they know to trust their intuition? Well, these techniques or these games of using different cards, scanning them and turn it over. Yeah, I got the right one. This builds the confidence. It reestablishes the connection with your intuition, and practicing it again and again and again builds the confidence that yes, my intuition works. It works with me. It works for me. It's my higher self speaking to me in symbols. Because as previously you mentioned, and the bald eagles flying by, that could very well have been a message from your higher self. Jung noticed in his volumes of work that the subconscious speaks to us in symbols. So when your subconscious wants to intuitively let you know this is the way to go, maybe you'll be stuck at a red light and you're like, man, maybe I should take this other way. And your intuition is helping to guide you to avoid a 20-minute delay stuck in traffic for work. So doing the practices doing techniques like that. Another technique Sifu Chris Matsuo taught us was nail rubbing, where you think about something and you rub one nail against the other. If it's wrong or not for you, it sticks. But if it's flowing nice and slow, then it's right for you. So using little, I won't say tricks, but little techniques like these can help a person not only reconnect with their intuition, but learn to trust it as their friend, which it is.
Yeah, if you haven't really gotten it by now, intuition is just listening to yourself, right? So you're just befriending yourself.
Yeah, it's being your own best friend.
Right. Listening to that voice inside of you that is you, right? Like, if you're not your own ally, who's going to be?
Yeah, that's a very good point. Yeah.
So let's get into a little bit of practice. All right. Since we're both in the Reiki sphere of things, let's stick on that energy stream today. So Reiki Ho is a very basic practice that anybody at Reiki level 1 should know. So let's go into Gasho and then bring it down to the heart. And then Gasho comes up to below the nose so that you can feel your out breath along the backs of your hands. Now, normally we might feel the Reiki energy along our crown. The idea here is that we're allowing the Reiki energy to go from our out breath down the backs of our hands, down the backs of our forearms, up our upper arms, and then down our back and our front toward our belly button and our lower back, or our lower dantian and Mingmen in Chinese alchemy. We're basically allowing the Reiki energy to fill up our entire body. And now what we're going to do is bring our hands back down to our hearts. And we're going to go into however we feel to lead ourselves in a small 5 posture hand practice. So I feel led to do this hand posture to start. I wear these headphones a lot, so there's a lot of pressure on my head, you know. You know, it's interesting. I find that the throat is one of the hand positions that a lot of people have some issues with comfort and spending a lot of time with their hands on their throat. So, you know, it's something that I teach a few different hand positions for in level 1, just so that people are comfortable, because not everybody is comfortable with having, you know, their hands directly on their throat at first. So, you know, maybe on the sides or on the back of your neck is more comfortable. So
I'm probably one of those people. I like to sleep with a shirt on, but it's got to be a V neck. I can't have anything tight on my throat when I'm sleeping. So I'm
Yeah.
I'm probably one of those people.
I see one of my classmates, he teaches this hand position pretty regularly for his Reiki classes. And I usually teach something more like this, which is a little bit less pressure, you know. It's energetically basically the same thing, but it's just that people are more comfortable with other things sometimes, you know. So I like to give people options, because this is supposed to be an intuitively led process, right? Like, we give them a structure so that they can take the practice home, but when they get home, it's theirs, right? Like, you can learn how to ride a bicycle, and this is how the brakes work and the pedals and all that, and that's pretty much how you ride a bike. But then it's up to you as to whether you have a mountain bike or a road bike or a commuter bike or a beach cruiser, and if you're going to be commuting or just riding around for pleasure. So Reiki is a similar thing. Are you going to do this for yourself, or are you going to do it as a business? It's up to you. I enjoy it. I really do.
I do too. Now, that kind of brings us to, I think, Max's one breath. You wanted to talk about that?
I thought we were going to go over some Mikkyo stuff first here. Just so that we could give some more options. You mentioned the tarot cards earlier.
Yep.
But I'm glad that you mentioned Max's one breath, because he did recently open up that course, and I did find a lot of value. We're going to put a link to the course at the end. That way, if anybody wants to experience that practice, they can. It's fairly inexpensive to access, and that'll be at the comments, and we'll talk about that a little bit.
Now, Matt, why would somebody wanting to develop their intuition be interested in that?
Well, one of the reasons that you would be interested in that particular practice is because of the amount of internal stillness that it produces. I found that the one breath is one of the most effective practices for quieting the mind, getting myself grounded, and being able to listen to higher energies, if you will.
Mm-hmm. Good. That's an excellent reason to check out Master Christensen's material. Yeah, I was like you, fortunate enough to be able to study with him when he visited Hawaii a couple of times. He was a big teacher. He featured prominently in Sifu Matsuo's early training, and that's how I got to meet him, was through Sifu Chris Matsuo.
Yeah, I have not met Max in person yet. I have known a couple of his apprentices, and my friend Tashi was one of his apprentices. I don't know if he still is. It's been a little while since I've seen Tashi. And then a friend of mine for years, Scott Shawland, was an apprentice of Max's for a little while. And then Tim White, who you have some school ties to, he trained with Max on Hawaii a number of times as well, and they're pretty close friends still, so they have a number of overlapping practices that they both teach. And Tim said, if I wanted to support the practice family, to go and get the books and all of that. And so I had one of Max's signed copies of a book jump off the shelf at my son's mom at the bookstore a couple of years back. So that was really interesting. But that said, I feel like this particular practice is a great adjunct to anybody who's already practicing Reiki. Max has a fairly affordable course on his website. But let's get into Mikkyo and increasing intuition. We mentioned when we spoke about this before getting into the recording, how the sacral chakra and the second mudra in the Kujikiri is, probably one of the best tools you can use to build your intuition. Would you like to expand on that?
I certainly would. Mikkyo and increasing intuition. The increasing intuition happens as a natural process of the use of Mikkyo, mudras, and mantras. This helps a person get in touch with the energy of life passing through their body. And the intuition can be described as the energy of knowing without prior experience. And this energy is passing through our bodies, and by the I'm going to edit into this video a cleaner, nicer view of this, but I'll just hold it up for a second. The Pyo Meridian. So that's about long.
That's the conception vessel, right?
Correct. The Ren Meridian.
Okay.
Now, it's running up the center of the spinal column in the back and up the front of the body to the tear ducts up the front. So when we're holding the mudra and chanting the mantra, it acts as a tuning fork within the body. So this tuning fork vibration vibrates through every cell in your body, and it's vibrating at the frequency that definitely encourages your intuition and helps get you reconnected with it. When I say reconnected, I actually mean it's taking all the blocks to your intuition and moving them and vibrating them out of the way. So the more often a person would do the Kujikiri, running the mudras and mantras, the less distractions they have between them and their intuition. Their intuition, they're able to hear what's being said to them by their intuition. So we could make an example or analogy of your intuition is your best friend sitting in the corner at a party saying, "It's time to go home. It's time to go home." And you have all this noise and the music's playing and people are blah, 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 blah. And if you pay attention to your intuition, if you that one voice that's speaking always directly to you, and you get the ego mind and all the clutter out of the way, then you get clear direction from the part of you that wants the best for you. And the Kujikiri, the mudras and mantras, help to clear everything out of the way so we can hear our best friend whispering what's our best next move. And I find that the connection with Mikkyo, that's it. It's getting us so all the distractions are out of our way and we can listen to our own best friend, us, our higher self.
So that brings me to the next part I wanted to talk about. The first mudra is more of a male energy. So the second mudra that we were just talking about is definitely more of a receptive feminine energy, correct?
That's the water. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Correct.
So I feel like, one of the things that this one is really good for is inspiration. If you're like an artist or something like that, if you're trying to like really receive like, okay, and personally I found out that I'm really just not supposed to be doing poetry anymore. I sat down with this thing for a moment. I'm like, okay, let's get some artistic guidance, and I got zero. But it did lead me to develop my Bagwajang a lot more, so my poetry is pretty much dead, but my martial arts is really picked up.
Well, that's your best friend whispering, "I'm to do Bagwa."
Right. So that is one thing that I have been trying to integrate is intuition and Bagwa. Once I got into like the deer horn knives practice and some of the static walking postures. I feel like those static walking postures can really teach you a lot about what your body is doing as you turn in circle. And if you're not really paying attention to your body in those postures, that you're kind of missing half of the equation of what they're trying to give you.
Correct. In Bagua circle walking, as you're contracting and expanding, you're really missing out if you're not listening to where's it feeling a little tight in my body. Is the liver feeling a little tight? Well, let's pay attention to that. Maybe do a little Reiki later. Or how are my shoulders feeling? Have I had a really tough week of driving to work, and are my shoulders, when I'm doing crashing elbow, is that like, oh my God, that feels so good when you do that? Maybe
that rising drill falling over turn was, oh, just popped it right back in. Yeah.
Maybe I should do that about another 100 times. So definitely listen to where is it feeling a little, and certainly don't break anything. But when you're feeling that, oh yeah, my body loves this stretch, then work with it. Work with your body. Listen to your body and work with it.
So that brings us back to Max's one breath. So we've talked about Bagua and Reiki and Mikkyo, and that practice can really enrich all three of them. Yeah. I feel like a lot of what Max has to offer with his Kunlun system can really act as a great basis for just about any energetic practice that you might have. It's going to accentuate a lot of what you have there. I've received Tim's transmission, and his teachings are slightly different, a little bit more his flavor, if you will. I think it was a little bit more Vajrayana focused than the Taoist side, but I really enjoyed going through some of these different things. I felt like the one breath, when Tim taught it to us, was really, really helpful to help me get grounded. I didn't feel like I was as grounded until I got into the one breath practice.
That's a good reason for our listeners and viewers to check it out.
Yeah, I mean, every antenna has to be grounded, right? Otherwise you get struck by lightning and you just turn on fire. So, it's pretty important. Using that lightning metaphor, you could think of like your soul's descent into the body as like lightning striking a pole, and if you don't have that grounding wire, it might just set you on a light.
Well, in looking at bringing in higher levels of energy, that's where I found the Mikkyo. Running the energy consciously through your meridians and chakras with the Kujikiri, the mantras and mudras and mantras. This helps prepare your body, your nerves, muscles, tendons, the whole thing, for those higher levels of energy. Because when you are getting the body accustomed, you're clearing out the rubbish so that there's nothing hindering that higher frequency coming in. And Ray Carbolito once put it and made a very good example. Said you can take a race car engine and put it in a Volkswagen, but when you take that first turn, you're going to find out you should have used a stronger frame. So what we're doing with the Mikkyo and the Sanjiao is getting our bodies we're building that frame. We're strengthening the nerves, we're strengthening the meridians, we're strengthening the chakras to handle that bigger engine, that more power, more divine power. And along with that clearing comes an opening for the intuition, bringing it right back to today's theme. These practices will help your intuition, definitely.
Yes, I feel like one of my students, his perception has really opened up a lot. He started doing about half of the Kujikiri mudras with me recently. So when I was taught Reiki, we were given a practice that we were told was called Ketsuin. So we basically go through Rin, Pyo, Kai, and Zen mudras to open and close our Reiki practices. And so I've passed that along to my students. Those are some of the simpler mudras from the Mikkyo practice. And, they're a lot more approachable than like To and
Yeah.
Sha, So, that also activates certain chakras and methods of energetic expression. So particularly, Pyo mudra, you have like masculine energy. I'm sorry, Ren mudra, you have masculine energy. Pyo mudra is female energy. Then you would have Kai, which is the outward vibration, and Zen, which is your entire energetic body. So that particular activation, I find, is pretty effective if you're going into a Reiki session.
Good. That's a nice way. That's a very good way to apply it.
Yeah. It's kind of like Mikkyo light.
Yeah, when in teaching Mikkyo, the two that have that take the most time in a class are To and Sha. That's for sure. That's for sure. Zen is pretty easy, and so is Kai. Yeah.
Yeah. Pyo is a little bit more difficult than some of the others, but if you can remember, like cross your fingers, that's really the most difficult part of it. So well, Michael, I really appreciate your time today. Is there anything else you wanted to go over before we disconnect here?
Yes, there is. In the description, there'll be a link to a video, and a meditation video I made to support this talk today. It's entitled "My Intuition Guides Me," and the link will be down below. It's a 1-hour video. It's got visuals with it, but you can just use the audio. It's best to use when you're going to sleep. It's very trancy, so don't drive and listen to it, please. And it guides the listener to reconnect to what they can never lose, their intuition. And the second thing I'd like to mention is there's also another video. It's a Valentine's. It's called a special Valentine's present. And that's going to be, please check it out. It talks about how somebody can win extensive training in Energiebewegung's Trust and Transform course. So check it out, and you may be the lucky winner. I'd like to thank you, Matt, for your help and expertise in intuition and all the good tips you shared.
You're very welcome. I wanted to mention really quickly before we disconnect that I'm going to be teaching a class at the end of the month here in Phoenix, Arizona at Elements of Spirit. That's going to be March 8th is going to be the second part, actually. February 22nd is the first class. So it's a 2-part class, February 22nd, March 8th. And we're actually going to be going through Psychic Reiki. It's going to be my first in-person class for the Psychic Reiki Crystal of Awakening from Bevell. I was certified in this about a year ago is when I got the certificate. And it took me a little while to figure out how I wanted to teach it in person and also provide people with a good value, because that's one of the things that Brett has really put like right into the ethics. Like my classes will be affordable and that sort of thing. So this class is not just a certificate for me, but you'll also have access to Brett Bevell's online certification course. So included in the price, you'll basically be one of my junior classmates in this system, and you'll get an in-person preparation, and then you can go through the online certification process with Brett and have the same certification I have.
Super. It makes me wish I lived in Arizona.
Well, you can always go on Brett's website. It's academyofloveandlight.us, I believe.
We'll drop that in the description.
Yes, that will be in the description. We'll have a link to Max's course as well.
Good. Yes, definitely.
Yeah. So thank you so much for your time today, Michael, and have a wonderful night there in Germany.
Thank you. And have a wonderful afternoon in Arizona.
Thank you.